what is the good life? And we use the word good, not great, because life has ups and downs. But what is the good life to me? For me, it's just being present. It's tonight at dinner, how do I be more present with my wife and my youngest daughter who's still at home? Every moment I sit there and I go, wow, what a gift. Today is a gift
Yeah.
because tomorrow is not guaranteed. We've created all the drama in our world. And so there are people right now that are so fired up because this politician did that, whatever the case. Politicians are actually neutral. It's the stories that we create. And if this person is so bad, why do you let them control your life? I can only control myself in this moment. How do I want to be? So if you're unhappy because X person is president or vice president or whomever, you're giving them authority. Now, it doesn't mean you have to agree with them. Quite the opposite. You can go, no, I want to be here. But do I want to spend my life in anger?
Most leaders are trained to think their way through problems, but the leaders who perform best under pressure don't just think. They feel, sense, and respond through their entire body. Today's guest says leadership isn't just mental, it's embodied. Welcome back to the Perpetual Growth Podcast, where we explore the strategies, insights, and human stories that help you grow your business, strengthen your relationships, and elevate your life. Because growth isn't just about what you achieve, it's about who you become in the process. Before we dive in, a quick ask. If you enjoy these conversations, please follow the show. Share the episode with someone who would benefit from it and leave a review. It helps us continue bringing meaningful voices and impactful ideas to the show. Today's guest has spent decades studying something that most leaders overlook: how the body influences leadership. Croft Edwards is an ICF Master Certified Coach, leadership advisor, and founder of Croft Company. With over 9,500 documented coaching hours working with executives, military leaders, and Fortune 500 teams, Croft specializes in somatic and embodied leadership for high-stakes environments. Before becoming a leadership coach, Croft served more than 25 years in the U.S. Army, retiring as a lieutenant colonel. His work integrates leadership theory, embodiment practices, and real-world decision-making under pressure. He's also the author of the new book, The Liquid Accordion, a somatic and embodiment primer for coaching in, with, and through the body. Today, we're going to explore how leaders can move beyond purely intellectual leadership and learn how to operate with greater clarity, presence, and resilience, especially when the stakes are high. Croft, welcome to the Perpetual Growth Podcast.
So great to be here, Zach.
Awesome. Beautiful. I'm excited to have you. Now, Croft, I always love starting here because I think it reveals a lot about how someone approaches life. I mean, what does growth mean to you right now in this season of your life?
Well, I'm no longer a spring chicken. So I'm in the 50s, which is for many people, it's kind of the turning point. But I was greatly influenced by Clint Eastwood's kind of view of life.
Hmm.
And his belief is never let the old man in.
Hmm.
And so growth for me right now, I'm always growing, but my goal is to never, it's not so much age because that's inevitable, but I want to have a reason to get up every day. I want to have a reason to be inspired. And so for me, growth is every day. I tell my wife I never plan on retiring because what would I do? I would just miss what I'm doing now. So I'm lucky I get to do stuff I love. So growth for me is just keep growing.
Yeah. No, I love that. I'm of the same mindset. My I started out my career in the health and wellness industry, and one of those things I observed very on. I'm a master of pattern recognition. I worked with a lot of affluent clients, many of which were aging, some more gracefully than others. And one of the big things that I noticed is there was a key differentiator. The ones that retired and went and sat on the rocking chair versus the
Mhm.
ones that retired and kept both their bodies and minds actively engaged, a part of the community, continuing to develop leaders. Body in motion stays in motion is one of my core
Yep.
beliefs. And I'm of that same volition. I want to sprint to the finish line. And frankly, I want to keep my mind and body active. I don't ever see myself totally retiring. Big difference between having to and choosing to, right? But
Yeah.
that's a core tenet for me as well. Now, tell me this, how's that growth, or excuse me, how's that definition of growth changed for you from your time in the military to the work you do now coaching leaders?
I think the biggest difference is I'm much more present now. Early on, I think as a young leader, I wanted so much to be to the next place.
Hmm.
But then a lot of my work in somatics and studying the body, I started to realize that my body was actually putting me in the future. My body was always forward.
Mm.
And so I started spending a lot of work in how do I become much more present and how do I be much more now? And so for me, it's so much of what I do right now is just how do I be in this moment? How do I focus on today? I still plan long term, but I'm not as caught up in, what's next or what's down the road. It's just how do I show up to today's call? How do I show up to today's workout, whatever it is I'm doing?
Yeah. I love that. I literally have the word written on a sticky note attached to one of my monitors. And it's just the word surrender.
Hmm.
And I think you said something so very important and so insightful, and I don't want to glaze past it because in today's world, we are so goal focused. We are so mission focused. We're so drive, drive, drive. And to your point, so much is out in the future. Now, we have to define those targets because fuzzy targets don't get hit.
Right.
At the same time, at some point, we have to release. Otherwise, we're constantly living in the future versus and not really being present for everything now. Where what was the moment that shifted for you? When did you become aware of the fact that I was living so much in the future and that there is a greater sense of, I don't know how you would define it, but for me at least it would be peace, joy, fulfillment, being in the now and not so stuck in the future. And how did you shift it?
So it really was, I think, in some respects, the real start of my somatic awakening. And it would have been about 2006, 2007. And I was down the journey of being a coach, and I just kind of started to understand the body. And I started doing Tai Chi.
Uh,
And I had an amazing sensei type teacher. And in Tai Chi, a lot of the movement is based on moving on your heel.
mhm,
But what I didn't realize was I lived on my toes. And because I lived on my toes, my body was actually more forward. And I started doing Tai Chi and actually struggled to do something as simple as pivot on my heel because my Achilles tendons were so short that my feet were like this all the time. And so to move them like this was difficult. So my teacher had me start in the morning when I would take a shower. He said, just connect your feet, your heels to the ground. But an amazing thing started to happen as I started to do that, my body started shifting more back. And as it shifted back, I actually became more present. And I was less in the future. I was actually more right here, right now. And then as I've gotten deeper into somatics, that's actually a kind of a way we look at things. Because if we think about it, if I'm always in the past, my body's back.
yeah,
Always in the future, right? I'm always going somewhere.
yeah.
Whereas if I'm present, I'm just right here. I'm more vertical. And so for me, that was very, very profound because I started to realize I'm like, wow, I'm actually enjoying things more
Mm,
because I wasn't in the past. I realized I would do stuff, but I was doing something just to get to the next thing.
mhm,
Right. I had young kids and I was like, oh, they're great, but I can't wait till they're older. Instead of being, oh my gosh, they're only going to be this age today. And was much more present and much more just really aware. And then that really started kind of that journey of studying the body and the power of the body.
I love that. I mean, when we center the body, we center the mind.
Yeah.
That's a really fascinating. I don't believe I've ever heard anybody share that. Now, what I find so fascinating is your background in the military. I mean, obviously you've accomplished and reached heights in the military that few do, and it seems so counterintuitive. I mean, just superficially, observationally, a military mindset and a somatic mindset. And maybe I'm completely off here, but those appear outwardly like they're the great the opposite ends of the great polarity. How did that convergence come together for you, and how did you see that start to impact your time in the military, and then I mean, I guess your environment in the military and outside of it?
Well, so the military is a very somatic organization, right? So
Really?
if you think of, yeah, so we take 40 young kids and we send them through basic training.
Huh?
And I always marvel seeing parents when they're at the end of basic training, because they would look at their kids like, who is this kid?
Mm,
They stand up straight. They're different. Well, the military actually teaches us to use our body as a weapon.
mm-hmm,
So it's hardened up. We do tons of push-ups. We tense our face. And so we come out of the military very much like this.
mm-hmm,
And it serves us because I may need to take my body and literally run it through something. But what we start to realize, though, is that is not the only way. It's a way.
mm,
And so for me, what I started to realize was my body, I had trained my body to become a weapon. And it served me because when I was in a situation, I could tense up, and I could make it through it. Right.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
But that also numbed many things like emotions, like feelings. Right. You're taught to suck it up.
mm-hmm,
And that's fine. It serves a purpose. But then if I can't access that, such as an emotion or a feeling, I can't experience it. So the military actually set my foundation for somatics. But where I would say I went is I included and transcended, so to speak. I included that military body, that resolute body, but I also learned how to open up my body,
mm,
how to relax my body, right? And how to show up differently in my body. So it's very much a part of me, but at the same time, I've included and transcended, and now I don't have to be a military type body. But you can see people that, it's the retired sergeant major that in their 80s is still a retired sergeant major. I'm not saying anything wrong with that,
yeah,
but that body has been trained for so long, the body doesn't know how to do anything else,
yeah,
because that body may not know how to have an intimate conversation
mm-hmm,
or to be tender or whatever the situation calls for.
yeah. That's an interesting subject in and of itself. I mean, in a moment, I want to explore a bit about your neck up philosophy, and I'll come back to that. But you said something so important right here that I do not want to glaze over. I mean, there's two things. Is one, I hear the harmony,
Mhm.
both between the structure, the discipline, the elements of rigidity, the being able to turn things on if and when and how we need to, but then also and be able to compartmentalize, so to speak, and then also that need to be able to go back internal. And you gave that example of a sergeant major that's retired and they continue to practice those same principles that made them successful in one area of life, but
Yeah.
they can actually become destructive in another. And what I hear
Mhm.
about that is what comes immediately to mind is the concept of identity. And the strongest force in the human psyche is the need to stay consistent with the way that we define ourselves. And when we defined ourselves one way for so very long, it can be difficult for many, without the right tools, knowledge, wisdom, people, resources, to make that shift and recognize that where we were rewarded in one area of life, for the way that we show up, can actually be a detriment in another.
Mhm.
And not only that, when we're going through a major life transition, I mean, there's when you've spent decades in the military, it becomes a part of many people. How do
Mhm.
you coach people? I have to imagine that you've worked with individuals, coaching them through that transition.
Mhm.
What does that look like? How do you talk about those identity shifts and really get them to become aware of who they really are as a person, and it's not who they are in the military?
Yeah.
Talk a bit about what that looks like, because I think this applies to many areas of life.
Well, from a coaching perspective, we build trust in a relationship, but then really what help them explore is, what do they care about?
Hmm.
And if I can connect with what I care about, that can be very powerful, but it doesn't mean I can still take care of that care.
Hmm.
So, for instance, if I really care about my family, but I cannot somatically or emotionally show that, I may actually lose my family.
Yeah.
So then the practice, a lot of the work we do is in the body. And I make the declaration, the body's the holy grail.
Hmm.
If I shift my body, I can do amazing things, right? So, as an example, on one extreme, if I don't run, I can't run a marathon. My body doesn't do that, but I can train my body to run a marathon. Well, it's no different with expressing love. If I don't know how to do it, I can't do it. My body's like this, but I can, through practices, learn how to start to share, express, feel love. So a lot of it, if somebody is very rigid or they're a very set observer, where we start is just bringing in the body and allowing the space to what if you could access your heart? What do you want to say? Right. And so it's kind of a journey, and each one is very specific to that need. But in the end, the body is the holy grail because I can have all the thoughts up here. But if I can't do it in my body, I can't do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there, I'm curious, we talked a little bit about patterns. Is there a particular place in the body that you have a tendency to start first? Is it with the heart? Is it relative and specific to the individual and where in the body they are carrying the majority of that anchored emotion, the stomach, the low back, the pain signals?
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that. I mean, what are some ways that our listeners might be able to start extracting, like, where do you start looking within?
So, kind of yes to all of that. But as an example, there are what we call pivot points in the body.
Hmm.
And a pivot point, if you think of a pivot, it's a place where there's undue influence. Well, I generally focus on four, and I'm not saying these are the only ones, and in no particular order. One is the eyes, right? So if you think about something, if I'm really focused, where are my eyes? Well, they're focused right there, as is, if you notice, if I focus my eyes, what's happened to my upper body?
Hmm.
It's moved in there. Conversely, if I move back and I relax my eyes, what's going to happen to my upper body? It's going to relax. Another one is the jaw. Okay. I learned this kind of the hard way. We're historical beings. And my father, when he would get fired up, would say, gee, Diet, and he would bite his bottom right canine tooth. You could take my brother and I, you could put us behind a fence and you could have us say the same words. We would be doing the exact same thing. We would sound just like my father,
Yeah.
right? Well,
Yeah.
where did we learn it? But
Right.
what I learned was this also, where is if I was angry, the more angry I was, the more tension was right here because I'm just, right? Conversely, if I relax my jaw, I can't actually be angry, right? And listeners can try that, right? And I'll give you another one. The hands. So if you think about the hands first of all have more sensors than any and nerves than anywhere in the body. That's why we can do the fine stuff. But if I take my hand and I create a fist, I'm literally engaging all of the core muscles.
Mm.
Conversely, I relax it, I'm not. So, for instance, if I have a leader that's very just in meetings, here's their homework in the meeting, which is to sit with their hands open and their palms open to the group. And all of a sudden, they can't do what they did before. They can't be angry, right? And you could try this relax your hands and now get angry, get intense, but keep your hands relaxed.
Mm.
I can't do it because I have to tense to get there,
Mhm.
right? And then the fourth is the feet, because the feet are where we connect with the earth, right? And in my example, when I'm on my toes, I'm literally in the future. When
Mhm.
I'm on my heels, I'm in the past. When I'm on my whole foot, I'm very present. And so I'll start a lot of that. And a lot of it is, the over the years, the wisdom I've accumulated to start to go, oh, I'll notice something. I was just coaching somebody this morning and she needed to make a declaration and we were exploring her body and she had a lump in her throat. Well, what is a lump in the throat? It's the voice needs to come out,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
It's the body literally going, I'm not going to let these words come out.
Mhm.
And the words that needed to come out were, I quit.
Mm. Wow.
But actually, as she started to access it, it wasn't, I quit. It was more of goodbye.
Yeah.
She needed to let go and say goodbye. She cared about these people. And as she did that, there was a congruency in her body. And now she could let go. She could move on. She could do what she needs to do. So
Yeah.
there's so many places to go, but it just kind of you go where you go.
Yeah. Now, I mean, to put another language to it, what you've identified are patterns.
Mhm.
Everything that we do, all emotion in many cases is stated through a pattern, both in the body and in language. And one of the things I frequently tell people is physiology first. Change your physiology, you change the way you feel.
Yeah.
It's like very simple to use that example of being on the other side of the fence. I mean, another simple alternative is we could put three people behind doors number one, two, and three, and I could say, describe the person behind door number one. Tell me what state they are in this moment. Now, if that person is depressed, are they standing up tall? Or are they sitting? Are they
Yeah.
hunched over? They're going to be hunched over.
Yeah.
Are they speaking from the stomach? Are they speaking deep? Are they projecting? Or are they speaking quietly?
Yeah.
Is there a passivity to their tonality? Is there
Yeah.
a fear? Is their face tight, or is it slack and relaxed? And so we all know unconsciously how to identify and step into these various states, but people don't realize how much physiology drives those emotional states. It's
Mhm.
not just the psychology, but when you become more aware of the body, you can now change the emotion. I love what you just said. I mean, that is
Yeah.
so very, very insightful. Now, did you want to add something to that, Croft?
Yeah. Well, I would say I use a different P word
Yes.
as opposed to patterns. I look at it as practices
Yeah.
because we're actually practicing this, and whatever we practice, we get good at,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And so it becomes a pattern, but even deeper, it's a somatic, what we call conditioned or historical tendency. The world presents itself in our body because if you think about it, the brain is part of a limbic system.
Hmm.
All of the sensors for the brain are the body: eyes, nose, skin, mouth, heart, gut, genitals, hands, feet. So the body is navigating the world, collecting data. The data then is sent to the brain, which goes, wait a second, I've seen this pattern before, or I've seen this situation before, and here's how we do it. Here's the practice we do to navigate that. That's why, like the military, what they do, there's many reasons we did push-ups, but it was actually to start to steel our body. So in situations that got tough, our body got comfortable with that tough situation. So we become our practices,
Yeah.
right? And we're always practicing something.
Hmm.
So if I want to do something else, I've just got to create new practices.
Fascinating. I love the simplicity and the complexity at the same time. I mean, fundamentally, some of these exercises aren't that really that hard, but it is making a new decision to practice them.
Yeah.
So I mean, one of the things you talk about, and you've been alluding to it throughout this conversation, is in so many cases we're trained to operate from the neck up. Actually,
Mhm.
one thing before we dive into this,
Yeah.
instinctively, I have this curiosity that because I suspect that it's something that many of our listeners are not familiar with. Most of us have heard the word somatic.
Mhm.
How would you define somatic?
Yeah. The Greek definition, it's the body in its wholeness.
Mm,
But it's fundamentally how we in our body navigate the world,
mm,
right? The title of my book is The Liquid Accordion.
mm.
And there's an actual reason for that. If you think about the body, we are fundamentally made up of cells,
Yes.
right? Some people say 7 trillion cells in an average human body, right? But if you think about each one, it's fundamentally just a little drop of water. We're mostly water.
Hmm.
And cells can only really do one of two things: they can expand, they can contract, right? So if we take a cell, it navigates the world by expanding and contracting. If we get a bunch of them, we form a layer, right? Think of your skin, expand, contract. Layers form tubes, expand, contract. Think veins and arteries. Tubes form organs, think heart, think gut, think lungs, expand, contract. Muscles expand, contract. So in any given moment, we are this liquid accordion navigating the world, and something pops up, and then the body either expands or contracts. This expansion or contraction then creates neural peptides and hormones which go to the brain and go shock, happiness. And so we are this liquid accordion navigating the world. But go back to the idea of practice. If I've only been practicing this liquid accordion, which is I am muscled up and I am going to fight everything, doesn't matter what happens, I'm going to fight it. Right? So the idea of practice, if I start to be, oh, what if I could be in choice? What if instead of my historical response, right? In my case, biting down on my teeth and yelling at my dog because they tore out a plant that I just planted, I could learn a new practice. And now I can actually be in choice. And so a lot really where we're going in coaching is the world is presenting something. How do you want to be with it? Do you want to do what you've always done and hit it like a hammer? Or do you need to maybe have a different conversation? And now to do that, now we have to have practices to be in choice.
I love this. Now, this is a great moment and opportunity. Croft, I want to pause for a moment and bring this down to something very practical. Now, if someone listening right now is leading a team, running a company, navigating a high pressure environment, maybe it's at home. What's one somatic practice they could start using immediately to improve their presence, be it leadership or non-conventional?
Well, it's the most simple practice we do every moment we're alive.
Breathe.
It's breathing. Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
Because breathing is the one thing. I cannot control my heart rate.
Yeah.
I can influence it.
Mm-hmm.
How is through breathing. If you look at every discipline,
Mm-hmm.
every masterful thing, athletes, military people, whatever, all of them, their core practice is breathing.
Yes.
Right? And it's as simple as taking a deep breath, right? And think about it. Every one of us, our grandparents or our parents, take a deep breath, calm down. But what usually would happen is we would go up here to our story instead of actually taking the deep breath and slowing down.
Mm-hmm.
So when we go into organizations, the first practice we start is centering. And it's fun. Like we'll get a group together and we'll do some somatic work. And for many people, somatic work is almost traumatizing because we sit in a circle and now we stand up and we're going to connect. And you see bodies just tense up. Like, and the first practice is breathe. Right. And I use the example, game 7 of the NBA finals, Steph Curry gets thrown the basketball. What's he going to do? He's going to breathe and shoot the ball like he's done it a million times. What are you and I going to do? We're going to our bodies are going to tense up and then we're going to miss it wildly. Why? Because we haven't practiced. But if we watch Steph Curry, his breathing is just like he's done every day. He's on a playground. He's having fun. Even though it's game 7 of the NBA finals, doesn't matter. He's breathing the same way. Elite performers, that's where they start.
Yeah. Now, you used an interesting word a moment ago, Croft. You said traumatic. And the first word that came to my mind is it traumatic, or is the practice of breathing releasing some of that stored trauma and allowing us to center? Or
Well, yeah. So there's a lot of cool stuff coming with where somatics is an amazingly powerful therapeutic tool, right? Because in a traumatic experience, my body, I'm not in my prefrontal cortex. I'm not thinking. I'm in my amygdala. Boom. This is a somatic response, right? Well, so what happens? The trauma gets stored in the body. And now, we see this like people that came back from OIF, they would come back and for a year, their body was like this, tense. And now they come back, but they don't know how to relax their body. So a lot of the work people have done is in tension and trauma releasing through somatic therapy, a thing called TRE, so on and so forth, so that my body can let go of it and go, oh, that isn't a threat. That's just a person walking down the street.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Where does flexibility come into play? Like where do you create the adaptability? Where do you create the flexibility? I mean, I have to imagine that there's certain environments where rigidity can be a superpower. And then in other environments where we need to be able to step back and be able to release effectively. It's one thing to be able to separate one from the other and teach ourselves how to relax. How do you know then which body you need to step into in the moment? Does that question make sense?
Yeah. So in the discourse, my background is in ontological coaching. The idea we look at is learning how to observe our observer. So in a sense, we're pulling back to go, ooh, where am I right now? Oh, I've got tension in my jaw. Oh, I need to relax my jaw. Oh, I need to take a deep breath. But what happens for many people is we live in the story. So it's happening and I can't see that I actually have a choice because I'm in the story. It's like I'm in the TV show. Don't do it, right? If I learn how to observe my observer, I realize I'm in choice. So the event presents itself. I have choice, right? So again, look at elite performers, SWAT teams, Navy SEAL teams, whatever. What they practice is in the moment doing what they do, which is breathing, being very present of, oh, here's the situation. My body initially wants, and the body's always there to protect. But if I've practiced, I can go, okay, here's the situation. I have training that'll, okay, I'll take this action because this will best serve me. Right.
Yeah.
And so it is a practice, but that adaptability, flexibility, versatility, whatever we call it, that's, I assess, a rare ability, because most of us, what we do is we find a body which serves us, i.e., we become a hammer, and then everything becomes a nail, and we start hitting it. Um, if we look at it from that perspective, flexibility is, now I've got a whole tool chest,
Yeah.
right? And I use the right tool for the right job. So maybe this conversation requires tenderness,
Mhm.
but maybe this next conversation, I need to be resolute, and I don't want to stop being a human. I don't want to be a hammer. I want to have a difficult conversation, but I want to do it lovingly. And so that skill for a leader is just amazing. But most leaders are like most people, we do what serves us, right? And so everything, yeah, we solve the problem, but because we only had a hammer, it doesn't look pretty, right?
Yeah.
But a true masterful artisan as a leader is, they can inspire people and they can have the hard conversations.
Yeah.
They can take action and they can bring people along, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. That's so very insightful. I mean, it took me back to like my early days of leadership. I mean, I took over a company when I was 20 years old. I had no real formal business going, education, mentorship, anything. And in the beginning, I modeled what I saw my dad do.
Yeah.
Because very stereotypical mid 1940s male, right? Like,
Yeah.
top down leadership, do as I say because I said do it because
Yeah.
I'm sitting in this seat.
I'm in
And I
charge.
realized
Yep.
fairly quickly, maybe not quickly enough, probably some of my team would say, that wasn't going to work in today's world, nor does it feel good.
Yeah.
But I think to your point, there's such tremendous power in observation and needing to be able to flow, pivot, and adapt relative to what the moment requires. And in some
Hmm.
cases, that could be, as to your point, a greater sense of rigidity and intensity and pressure. And in some cases, it's just more love and consideration. And regardless of what the emotion that is required in the moment, what is required of us is a keen sense of observation. And it sounds like so much of that starts with controlling the breath because now we become more mindful and we can become more appropriately decisive as opposed to responsive, reactive in the
Yeah.
moment. Am I is that a fair way to summarize all the things you've been saying, or how would you
Yeah.
expand upon that?
Well, so from a somatic perspective, a term I use is, we become a somatic tuning fork. So I'm listening for limbic resonance with the other person. How
Mm,
do I listen? And a distinction: hearing is biological, so you can hear a word. Listening is interpretive.
yes.
I assign my meanings. Well, if I'm very good at listening, I'm not only listening with my ears, I'm listening with my eyes.
Mhm.
I'm listening with my heart, with my gut. And now I'm becoming this tuning fork to go, wait a second. My listening is, they're not really inspired right now. Or they're saying yes, but their body's actually saying, no, I'm just going to be compliant. So how do I then pivot and go, Zach, you're saying yes, but my sense is there's something you're not sharing with me,
Mhm. Yeah.
right? Are you open to having that conversation? And if I can then also be in a body that says, I'm an open conversation,
Hmm.
right? That can be very powerful. So a lot of it is just, back to that idea of perpetual growth. We're continually refining that. But if all I've been practicing for 40 years is being a hammer, well, I'm going to be good at it. But pretty soon, all of my final product is going to look the same.
Yeah. What a fascinating concept. I mean, I love this conversation on so many different levels. What have you found to be the greatest um uh I, it's now everything that's coming to mind is what we were discussing. Anytime you put a word to an experience, it becomes an experience. Now I feel myself very reluctant to pick specific
Yeah.
words to try and, frame the conversation. But, what would you say has become the greatest um, byproduct for you of this, evolution in the way that you now lead life? And what do you see that the most common byproduct being so for many of your clients? I mean, both. And what I love about this is what's so important is this is not just something that will now be a reflection of our careers, but has the ability and the opportunity to completely transform every area of our life.
Yeah, I one of the questions that I was asked about 10 years ago, which I think is very profound, is what is the good life?
Yeah,
And we use the word good, not great, because life has ups and downs, but what is the good life to me? And so for me, it's just being present. It's, this weekend, my oldest daughter's coming home. So how do I be more present with her?
yeah,
Right. Tonight at dinner, how do I be more present with my wife and my youngest daughter who's still at home? Right. How do I get up? I'm one of those people, I get up at 4 a.m. every day. I go to the gym. We have a farm, and then I'm outside. Every moment I sit there and I go, wow, what a gift.
mm,
But even if it isn't the farm or the sunrise that's rising, it's the choice of today is a gift, right? So you've probably read Man's Search for Meaning and Viktor Frankl, and the power of his captors he could not control whether they took his life, but
right.
he could control if they took his soul and if they
Yeah,
took his meaning. And that for me that's that path to whatever we call wisdom or something like that. And just being very present, and this gift today is a gift
yeah,
because tomorrow is not guaranteed.
yeah. It's fascinating. I had the opportunity. I was at a high school graduation, and I had the blessed gift to see a woman speak. She was 104 years old, Holocaust survivor. And I do not
Wow.
remember what she said in the moment, but I remember the depth of emotion that I felt and experienced. I mean, the appreciation for what she had gone through, but also how she carries herself today. There was no anger, there was no resentment. And then to your
Yeah.
point, we're all meaning machines. It's like our
Yeah.
brain is creating meaning around every single moment. And the thing is, we get to control that narrative, but most people are letting their
Hmm.
brains, the little devil on the shoulder, speak up. And it's like, what I tell people all the time is what's wrong is always available, but so
Yeah.
is what's right.
Yeah.
Fear and faith are both future focused. The only question is which one are you going to choose? And what I love
Yep.
about what you're talking about is we need to be mindful of the future, but practice a greater sense of presence here and now. So, I
Yeah.
mean, what I would love, I want to zoom out now for a moment. And what I'm curious about is that you've spent decades helping leaders grow and develop in some of the most demanding environments. I mean, 20 years from now, when
Hmm.
leaders look back at your work and the ideas in the liquid accordion, what do you
Hmm.
hope changed about the way people lead?
Oh, that's a pretty powerful question. I think it's just that we've created all the drama in our world, right? And so there are people right now that are so fired up because this politician did that, whatever the case.
Hmm.
The politicians are actually neutral. It's the stories that we create. And if this person is so bad, why do you let them control your life? Right? I can only control myself in this moment. How do I want to be? So if you're unhappy because X person is president or vice president or whomever, you're giving them authority. Now, it doesn't mean you have to agree with them. Quite the opposite. You can go, no, I want to be here. But do I want to spend my life in anger? Right. One of my peers wrote a book, and one of his key points is, would you rather be right or would you rather be happy? Both are a choice, right? If I'm gonna die on this hill, I've got to be right. Okay. But is it worth damaging a lifelong relationship with a family member just to prove you were right?
Yeah,
Or would you rather let go of it, right? And that lady you heard speak, she probably realized I could spend the rest of my life being angry at my captors, or I can live the rest of my life loving other people, creating good, whatever it is. And that's to me. So hopefully people walk away going, I have a choice and I choose to live a good life, whatever that is for them.
yeah, that's beautiful. I mean, I don't think there's any greater gift.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, Croft, so for leaders, for anybody listening today
Hmm.
that wants to deepen their understanding of embodied leadership, and with leadership, this is leadership of self. This is
Yeah.
leadership in business. This is leadership in your interpersonal relationships as a parent. I mean, any single context, regardless of the field of play. You know, where can they learn more about your work, more about your book? How can they get in touch with you?
Yeah.
What's the best way?
So, well, the good news is being with the middle name of Croft, there's not a lot of Crofts, and I don't think there's any other Croft Edwards. So, if you Google Croft Edwards, you're going to find me. The book is liquidaccordion.com. My webpage is croftandcompany.com. And then I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on X, and that perpetual growth. My one daughter has me starting down the path of TikTok, and my other daughter has me starting down the path of Instagram. So again, there's not a lot of Croft Edwards. So please, love
Absolutely.
conversations. You can find me.
Amazing. Croft, this has been a fascinating conversation. I mean, this is one of those conversations where I think we may have to have you back because we could go a heck of a
Would
lot
love
deeper.
to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the biggest takeaways for me is that leadership isn't just intellectual. It's
Mhm.
relational, it's emotional, it's embodied. And the
Yep.
best leaders aren't simply the smartest people in the room. They're the ones who are present, aware, and adaptable under
Yeah.
pressure. So, I mean, thank you for sharing your insights and experience with us today. And to everyone listening, if this conversation resonated with you, be sure to share it with a leader in your life who would benefit from hearing it. Now, follow the show so you never miss an episode. And remember, growth isn't just about what you achieve, it's about who you become along the way. Thanks for listening to the Perpetual Growth Podcast. Croft, it has been an absolute pleasure, my friend. Thank you for joining us today.